Hello, and welcome back to the Critical Thinking channel. Um, so, I've been having a little think about everything, and I was talking to friends and relatives over the last few days, and we talked about the news and everything. Um, and I thought to myself, well, what should I talk about in the news there's sort of very much the same stories at the moment. I'm very passionate about the NHS, obviously, and I support our strikers, of course, because they are trying to make the working lives of everyone better. But we were talking about like recent years, so it's almost like everybody's suffering from memory loss. We had the lockdowns and the COVID, and it just all seems to be like forgotten about so quickly. But I sort of feel like everybody's in a sort of shock and awe state, like we've had this kind of huge thing happen, and everybody's like, "Boom! Oh, what the hell's going on?" And I find it strange. Like nobody hardly ever talks about it now. Although, yeah, last few days I have talked about it with some friends and family, and I was thinking, when you look at what's gone on, it's like, well, I don't know. It's hard to explain it. It's very hard to put into words. But I think to myself, we had the COVID thing, and then they were saying like have a jab, protect granny. We found out. In fact, I've looked at the research now. It was never tested for transmission. It was never tested to see if it would stop hospitalization. Spit that out. And it was never tested on whether it would, stop you dying. Basically, it was only tested on a mild form of mild infection of COVID, and whether the vaccine would produce antibodies. Well, I don't know. It's just really, really, I'm struggling. I'm struggling to get my head around it all, because we went through that, and as time's gone on, the things that this I don't know what to make sense of it. I know there's a lot of conspiracies about. But genuinely, we were told all these things. None of it seems to be true. Even the fatality rate, which was put at about 3%, I think, at one time, which 3% of 7.5, 8 billion people is quite a lot of death. But it turned out to be, because obviously there's a higher death rate in the elderly, and there's almost zero rate of death in children. So when you add it all up and average it out, it's 0.03, I think it was, something like that, 0.03. Well, I've seen two figures, as there is with everything lately. So it's either 0.03 or 0.07. So I don't know. Like, it's just like we had the lockdown. We've destroyed the economies around the world. What do you lot think about it? I just really, really can't get my head around it, I suppose. Each thing as I've looked at it and gone by, I thought, what was all that about? But I then remembered a documentary that I'd seen, and I've got to get the name right. The woman's name is Naomi Klein, and it's spelled Klien, I think, Klein. And she is a professor of American history. I think it's in Canada. And she has done a documentary, and it's called, and this is where I've got to get it right, it's called The Shock Doctrine. And it's called something that's right, it's called The Rise of Disaster Capitalism. And the one I've seen, it says 2009, so I must have seen it quite a while ago. Anyway, if you can remember that, so it's Naomi Klein, The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism, 2009. I recommend watching it, because what I saw was how basically the USA has gone around the world creating disasters for its own economic advantage. You know, a lot of these wars, things that it's created. And I mean, I've known about a lot of this for a long time, but to see it all put there for you, and like a little history of the events over time, well, is, yeah, I don't want to use the same expletives, but it is mind blowing. So I recommend that. I recommend you should watch it, and then maybe you get the sort of hang of the sort of things that I look at and I want to talk about with the critical thinking. But yeah, it's very worrying, and I do feel a sense like everything that we're struggling with in this country and really across Europe, everything's been created by politicians and world leaders. So all the problems, like, first of all, and this is not so much Europe, but their decisions they made different. But if I used the UK, United Kingdom, as a representation, basically the UK government privatised the energy companies, right? So these energy companies have been paying literally billions and billions. I think it's something like 600 billion they've paid out to shareholders. It might even be more than that, but this was over a period of time. I can't remember, but I think it's since they've all been privatised, like at the point where they're all privatised, it's over 600 billion. It's been paid out to shareholders. But what they've done is they've not been working on the infrastructure. So we knew a long time ago that we'd have to transfer to green energy. But instead of investing in the green energy, they've just been paying out to shareholders and paying them the fat cats, huge salaries and all this sort of thing. Anyway, so I looked at that and I thought, right, okay. And then when you look at it, you thought, well, recently we've had this, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, right? So they've said, basically now everything, whether it's a food shortage, inflation, lack of fuel. Well, the UK only relied on 4% of Russian gas. We get most of our gas from Norway, and produce some of our own. So 4%, and that, I mean, the energy bills in the UK have gone up 50%, and then another 40%. So I mean, basically, they've probably almost doubled, if not more. But all because of 4% gas from Russia. Well, that's not the whole story. The whole story is the government set up this scheme where everybody gets a payment to help towards their energy bill. And in total, it was going to be 130 billion was being paid to the energy companies to actually pay us back. But that's our taxes. So we're getting money back from our own taxes, but the government's actually paying 130 billion to the energy companies, because if they're paying us that back, then the energy companies are getting 130 billion extra profit. And this is all over like the course of 1 year. And the reason they've done that is so they can continue paying their shareholders and do the investment. So we're paying for their incompetence, corruption, badly managed businesses. We're paying for that. And there was another point I was going to make about that. Not only have we paid for all of the we paid for the infrastructure before with our taxes before that was privatised, but then they haven't redone it. So now we're going to be paying it through our taxes, but with the thing that this kind of illusion that we're getting money back, but it's our money to begin with. So it's just so corrupt, and so that's the problem. The problem that they're saying is a energy crisis, cost of living crisis, and all the rest of it. But it's all been self-created because, here in the UK as well, we had Brexit, so of course that's interrupted certain supplies and things going backwards and forwards because of all the regulation changes and whatever, and then that adds price to everything. That goes on to inflation. But all the while people are getting less and less money, the wealthiest people in the country have grown their wealth by literally, I think it's over the last 13 years. It's something like 1 trillion. You know, their wealth has grown. Now, one thing I do remember, I watched a program. You can still get it online, and it's called The Super Rich and Us. It was a BBC. Somebody Peretti, I think his name was Jack Peretti, I think it was. He done a documentary on the BBC, and it was about how the super rich, you know, were how much they earned in a year. And what it was, the top 1,000 richest people in the UK in that year had increased their wealth by the same amount as the total earnings of Britain's 47 million workers at that time. Yeah. Why do we put up with it? Why are we not talking about this every day? Why are we not like France? Why are we not out in the streets? You know, it just blows my mind. So come on, Britain. We can do better than this. And the rest of the world. Let's just say enough is enough. And we've got to do something about it. Well, that's my big political stance. And let's hope it rings some bells with some of you. Let me know in the comments. And subscribe, please, if you like what you see. And let me sit here and do my little rants and talk about critical thinking. And that's what critical thinking is. It's looking beyond what people can accept. You know, I do feel a sense that we've become a little bit like robots, and we're just tootling along, accepting, and things are getting worse and worse and worse. And like, when does it stop? So enough is enough. See you next time. Take care.